Welcome back, my friends. Thanks again for joining us for another episode as we continue studying through the Word of God together. We're glad you're with us and hope the next couple minutes will be a help to you as we continue studying through the book of Mark. If you're following along with us, we are in the book of Mark, chapter number 3. And we're going to, over the next couple episodes, begin to see a unique approach that Mark takes when describing certain stories that come with Jesus. We're going to see one unique aspect today we get a little bit of the glimpse of Jesus' family, his earthly family, at least in this part of his ministry, towards Jesus, a unique glimpse here in the book of Mark. So follow along with us. If you are, Mark chapter 3, we're going to jump in verse number 7. And it says, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed from Galilee and Judea, and Jerusalem and Idumea, and from beyond the Jordan, and from around Tyre and Sidon. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, they came to him. And he told his disciples, have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. And whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, you are the Son of God. And he strictly ordered them to not make him known. So we see a section here that's unique because really the focus of these verses focus most of their attention on the popularity of Jesus. You go to the Gospels, you're going to see different aspects of his time in teaching and things of that nature. But here, this one's it's not focusing on a certain healing. It's not focusing on one specific person. This is focusing on the aspect of Peter being called. This is a part where you're just seeing the popularity of Jesus. And you look at this and you might think, what's the main point? And as we get to the next couple of sections of story, you're going to see, in fact, at the end of the next section, you're going to get an idea of why the importance of his popularity was so necessary, at least in getting the full context of his story and his account and humanity that he had at this time. But we do see the point where he says, get a boat ready because there's going to be so many people he's going to be crushed because he had healed so many. Anybody who had heard, you understand, you live in a day where there wasn't what we would enjoy as modern medicine. And so when he's healing people there's no cure in that day, especially when you think of the idea of demon possession. There's somebody who has power over these things. And so his name's getting out from all over the place. They're coming to him and they're wanting so badly if they can just get close enough to touch him. He's beginning to afraid that he might be crushed or pushed out into the water. He might not be able to do all of this. I mean, literally the crowd, to an extent, there's fear the crowd would get out of hand. And so we get the intense popularity of Jesus predominantly in this situation due to him healing people. Now, we also recognize in this same section, this is mentioned more than once in the book of Mark, how that as he was casting out demons, in many occasions the demons would scream who he was. He would again shut the people up. Do not say this. He had a different mission. He was coming as the Messiah, but he wasn't coming to sit on the throne. He was coming to go to the cross. And so he was quieting the demons as he's done already a couple occasions in this book. And you see what must have been a physically exhausting job, and as he's walking there, remember, he's 100% God, but he's 100% man, which also means he has limitations. I mean, he's hungry, he's tired, all of those different things going on, and he's working, and so he has these limitations. He's taken on, Philippians 2 says, the human limitations of a servant, of a human man. So he's taken on, so he has all of the limitations, the fatigue, and all the thing that comes with it, with all of this work. And so he is running, to an extent running, getting away is just the immense amount of work. Now we get to another section, again, building on this other one, about the idea of he's getting ready to send out his disciples. And we see, verse 13, it says this, then he went up unto a mountain, and they called to him those who he had desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach, and have authority to cast out demons. He appointed the 12, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, to whom he gave the name of Boanerges, or sons of thunder, Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So really what you get is a list. There's a couple of things in this one. You get the power Jesus gave them. So he assigns 12. He brings in 12 and he assigns. He's got disciples following him, but now he's breaking it down, not just the 12, but he's giving them the name apostles. These are going to be the group that God is going to use to begin the church. He's going to use in this transitionary period. Many of them are going to write what we have as the New Testament, and he is using them for the purpose of beginning and in this transition. It's unique. In this fatigue, to an extent, Jesus recognized in his plan, I still believe the plan today, there's only so much one man can do. His man's job, a leader's job, is to train leaders. A leader's job is to give other people opportunity, get out of the way, train, equip, and place those people in positions where they can thrive and they can grow. And when the more of them you train, the more of them you equip, the more people in the church ministry are blessed and served, and more people we can reach. If you limit it to the ability or the charismatic nature of one man, there's always going to be massive limitations. So Jesus equips him, doesn't just send him out to preach. He gives him the ability to heal. Gives him the ability to cast out demons. He gives him a lot of ability. They need to preach, to be with him, to teach. And again, you can see just in context the amount of work's going on. He goes, I need to expand this out some. I need to offer this as a greater opportunity. It's grabbing attention. It's also a greater tool to get out and give the gospel. But there's two things I find intriguing. In the last verse we just read is he describes Judas Iscariot as who betrayed him. There is another Judas in the Bible. In fact, it will reference who did not betray him, basically. It's constantly reminded of who this man was. While he was one of the 12, he would ultimately betray him. That's something we see. So we get to watch this man who followed for whatever reason and ultimately betrayed, never really believed in Jesus, walked right by him, watched him do all of these great miracles, but never really put his faith in him. But here's a part where we're going to conclude with this today, because it's really an introduction to the next episode. One of the things that Mark will often do in his writing of the gospel is he'll kind of do a sandwich story, as one man put, I was reading. So he's got an account and we're going to read in a moment about his situation with his family. Then there's an account that has to do with scribes. It's really nothing to do with his family. And then there's another one that jumps back together to deal with his family. And you'd almost, when you're looking at him, conclude that these stories don't have a whole lot to do with each other. They don't seem to make a whole lot of sense. What's he trying to do? And we do get a lot of glimpse at this point in the humanity of Jesus. We get his point on the dynamics of him and his family. Now, please remember something, especially before the section we will conclude with here in a moment. His brothers and sisters, brothers specifically, did not believe in him as God. James and Jude, who ultimately read books of the Bible, did and were some of the first converts of Jesus. But at this point, they did not believe him as the Messiah. And we might even see that Mary, even though she had all these visions and she knew who Jesus was, this next section of Scripture is unique in the aspect of how his family viewed him at the moment. And let's look at this. Verse number 20. Then Jesus, went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. So he goes home, and the crowd, and you understand, if he's afraid to be crushed or pushed out in the water in the first story, and in this story, the crowd is so heavy they couldn't eat, this crowd is not kind. This crowd is heavily invasive. They're pushing, and they just don't even recognize to give him a moment to rest, to the point where his whole family, they can't even cook. They can't even go outside and cook the food because the crowd is so great and so rough, really, if you're going to look at it. And so in verse 21, and when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying he is out of his mind. Did you catch this? His family heard all of the chaos, went out, pulled Jesus in, and the family said he is out of his mind. The family did not fully believe in him as the Messiah at this moment, and so they looked and said, if you almost want to say this, almost like, man, this man's creating his own cult. They saw the crowd, they saw these things going on, and they just hadn't fully embraced who he was, and you would assume Mary would have a different unique. She had the visions of who Jesus would be and all that would happen. And yet, as the brothers were reared next to him, he was nothing more than just the oldest brother, a carpenter. What's he doing teaching? What's he doing being a rabbi? All these different things. Even Mary and Joseph go back to the temple and they see Jesus and he says, I must be about my Father's business. But it still wasn't enough at that point to completely convince. We don't understand all the reasons why. In fact, God doesn't give us a lot of details on that. Just the fact that his earthly family battled with him and who he was, at least at first, up to this point, to the point where they thought there was something wrong with him potentially. What is he doing? It's an intriguing aspect to look at. You get a little bit of a glimpse of the history of Jesus as a man. Remember, he grew up there as a kid. You have to understand, he would have never done wrong. He would have never sinned. He would have been perfect, which might have made it even more complicated to be. Can you imagine, Mom, Dad, why can't you be more like Jesus? Can you imagine what that must have been like? I don't know if that caused it. There's always sibling rivalry. I don't know if that was the cause of it, but I can say this. Up to this point, they did not embrace him as many in the world did They undoubtedly had heard the things he was doing, but still had not embraced him as a Messiah. It would be later, after his death, for this his brothers, of death and resurrection, before they became believers in him. So we get a little bit of a glimpse of this, and that's the reason for the immensity of the popularity. He sends out the 12, and then the crowd. You can see how all these stories, when you understand the context, connect together to begin to see the reasons why Jesus is doing some of the things he is doing, which is one of the neat parts about the Bible. Step back a minute, look at all of it, and get a full glimpse in context. You give everything in context, you'll learn just a little bit more. Well, thanks again for joining us today, taking this time to study with us in the book of Mark. I hope you continue this journey with us as we walk through the life of Christ. Again, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again next time.